Of course.
F spells fuck the past.
K says
kiss the future.
welcome to the Walter van Beirendonck show on Show Studio. Maarten, if you'd like to do the intros, start the intros.
I'm Maarten van Horst. I'm a designer and I work as a stylist and as a lecturer.
I'm Carri. I'm a designer, stylist and creative director.
I'm Curtly and I'm a menswear consultant.
I'm Hettie. I'm a writer and editor specialising in fashion, art and design.
I'm Daryoush and I work at Complex Magazine in the UK. So basically just wanted to, we're doing Walter van Beirendonck again. This morning Curtly sent me a fantastic film of a Wild and Lethal Trash show from 1995. Which is the quote at the beginning of the panel that me, Carri and Curtly just did. And I thought it was just really interesting that he devised an alphabet, a fashion alphabet, and just thought it was really interesting, really, that fashion is so bound up in taste, and Walter just has never really given any fucks for taste whatsoever, which is why I thought it was interesting to talk about. Why don't we just watch this film and we can just talk through it? Do they have sound out there?
We do something.
A stands for alien anarchy, and B for beat and be daring. C for cosmic culture clash. D for discongregations. E is easy to buy, easy to wear. Of course, F spells fuck the past. G stands for glam and glitter. H means art, hope, and heroes. I is me and imagination.
Curtly, where did you find this?
Just on YouTube, you know. My friend Tolga Ozturk, he's kind of obsessed with water, so he always knows where to find the best videos from. So he's the one that sent me that.
It's so beautiful. It's so life affirming.
It is amazing. He also also has, you know, all the old shows that were in like arenas, and those are pretty crazy.
J is jam, jeans and music. K says kiss the future. And L is lethal and love. M stands for Mustang and money.
Yeah, that was. I was about to say it was interesting because this is when he was backed by Mustang, and he had a large budget for doing shows. So it's quite nice they said Emerson, Mustang, and money. And they were incredibly lavish. I mean, like he had all of this alien makeup, and the collections were for children as well as adults. And they were really wild. And he had a lot of money for fabric research as well. He was doing some really interesting, kind of experimenting with inflatable fabrics and lots of plasticized techno fabrics. So.
I remember lenticular t-shirts. They were like.
Who were Mustang? I have read about them, but I don't really remember.
Are they a German brand?
I have no idea. I heard master and money. Maybe that's my own personal.
Is in the car.
No, I think I'm. Look,
They're a jeans brand, right?
Yeah, I should know this because I've worked on the book, but my memory is I think they're a German-owned jeans brand.
Weren't they a bit like Psycho Cowboy? Do you remember them? Psycho Cowboy were like a really sort of. They weren't a trance brand, but they were basically like you can imagine when cornrows the first time on a sort of white trance singer. Very very good for a look right now. But yeah, Psycho Cowboy.
I think they were probably a slightly more mainstream brand that got Walter on side to, well, quite literally sex things up.
I think maybe Mustang is a bit like Wrangler, you know?
Yeah.
And Lee, that kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like makes sense as that kind of name, isn't it?
Yeah.
Americana.
Wasn't wearing it.
I just think it's like amazing the breadth of ambition there. Like, you know, there's so much pressure. And there's so much pressure in fashion to be careful. You know, you're always told to be careful what you say, careful, you know, what you do, not, you know, don't cause problems, don't do anything too radical. And yet here's this guy doing, you know, this nutty sort of ravey pop rap, and doing that for a jeans brand, and just, you know, I don't know, what do you guys think? Do you guys love it? Think it's awful? Think it's...
I love it. This kind of sums up to me one of the many reasons, well, the main reason why I love Walter. Like, he's created a whole alphabet that sums up his like philosophy and his aesthetic, and that's why I love him, because he's a designer that creates his own world, and it's a complete world. And each season he's just growing and growing on that, and like expanding that world.
Maarten, what do you? Because you're not. Although you're, you know, from the Netherlands, you're not somebody I would presume would be a Walter fan.
I'm a Walter fan, like the man himself. I think he's one of the most sweetest people I've ever met in fashion, and I don't know, I recognize the same, which, you know, I don't want to talk about Greg Green all the time, but I noticed the same kind of similarities in character between them two. Just very warm and generous, and I mean, I had one tutorial from him when I was a student, but yeah, it was incredible. I'm a big Walter fan, absolutely. I would just never wear it. I just can't wear it. I'll look like a complete fool. I also had very red hair, and at times I would literally look like a clown. But I don't know, it's the Belgians that I'm a huge, huge fan of, obviously. It's the reason why and I think also for a lot of Dutch people, they were interested in fashion. It's because of the Belgians, because of Margiela, because of Walter.
What is there a word for Flemish and Dutch together? Like, do you have an identity?
No. You have Belgian fashion, and you have Japanese fashion, and at some point you had Dutch fashion. And Dutch fashion lasted like 2 years. That's it. It was the start of Victor and Rolf, and you had other. You know, Totem in Paris was completely filled with Dutch designers at one point. And it was quite incredible, beautiful things being made. Saskia van Drimmelen, a Dutch designer, was showing the Paris schedule. It was really beautiful clothes. Very much about deconstruction, but in a completely different way. It was really beautiful, very poetic.
Is there anything like identifying about Dutch fashion?
Identifying in the sense that process and concept is incredibly important, and commerce is not important, which I obviously also was the reason why it didn't maybe not last very long. But I think that's a very important part of Dutch fashion and Belgian fashion, is that it has a spot in galleries as well. Like the museum collections in Rotterdam and in Utrecht, they buy so much fashion. Edith van Herpen, Victor and Rolf, you know, they have their entire collections there, and that's how I grew up with fashion. I grew up with seeing Maarten Margiela exhibition in Rotterdam with the bacteria growing over the dresses. So for me, it's very much a connection between contemporary art and fashion that was very Dutch.
Do they still have the Biennale, Fashion Biennale in Holland? I did it one year.
I think it's on break now.
Okay.
We had
I thought that was really special.
Edelkoort did it after Jof, because I think you were there when Jof was curating it, and then Liedewij Edelkoort did it, which was supposed to be a big success, because of course Liedewij Edelkoort is the guru of trend forecasting, also Dutch. But it's taken.
Do you find like maybe Carri, you might have an answer to this. I guess to some extent with fashion, there's always the risk of, you know, because everything's sort of fabulous and glitzy and kind of big, there's always the risk when you make a statement of overstepping and going into Zoolander territory. Or I remember somebody once saying I had an idea for something and they sort of dismissed it as cartoon punk. And you know, there's always that worry that you know, what was the famous maybe I don't know, maybe I'm getting reality mixed. It was Derelict, wasn't it, on Zoolander, the homeless you know, thing. I mean, is that, do you find that worry oppressive, like that kind of, you know, that need to keep everything in a shiny black box of fashionableness, especially the designers on the panel?
I think as someone that wears a lot of colour and print and also designs that way as well, I think it is harder to be taken seriously. But I think someone like Walter is like, he does like impeccable tailoring, like his craft is like, I mean, that's, no one can contest that. So I think, and I feel like also when you're doing print, colour, or if you're doing like, even you're doing like theatrical presentations, it's like you can't go there, you've got to go there. You've got to go the whole way, and that's when it doesn't work. When you do hold back, you've got to just completely let go. And as you said, not give up.
I think it's also very much about philosophy and about the individual's perspective on the world. Like Bernard Wilhelm was exactly like that. Walter is exactly like that. When you have visionary, creative people that have their own perspective, which is much more colorful and obviously has a very good sense of humor, because there's nothing sexier than a good sense of humor. That's why I thought Bernard Wilhelm, when he was doing Windsor, was one of the sexiest things I've ever seen. Obviously, I have a very strange sense of humor, maybe. But
no, I agree. I see Bernard as like my big brother and Walter is the daddy. There's like definitely a connection.
No, Bernard Wilhelm is definitely.
I don't know how close they are, but it's definitely like family.
No, I think they're very close, because there's the shop now, DVS in Antwerp, from Dirk van Stanen. They stuck Bernard Wilhelm, and
Walter taught him, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah, for 1 year. Yeah, but you know, obviously Walter had the Walter shop, which was the best shop that I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, it was like dreams coming true when you walked in there.
Yeah,
I'm sure for you it was exactly the same.
I never been.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It went bankrupt twice.
Is this the one in the sort of garage
Yeah,
space?
it's the one when you walked up and the door rolled open and you were like, what the hell, this is incredible.
Wasn't there like teddy bears on their side that were the shelves?
Gigantic teddy
huge,
bears,
yeah.
and yeah, it's beautiful.
But I think what you said about sense of humour is really important, but Bernard and Walter both have that. And it's a very European thing, I think. It's a very European sense of humour and kind of manliness and sexiness. It's very specific.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, and I also think it's very anti-establishment. It's not about commerce. It's not about mass market. You know, people sometimes are confused and think that fashion is just commerce, but it's not. You know, it's also very much about people actually, you know, kind of being self-indulgent and expressing their view and their perspective. And not everyone is out to have 1,000 shops on the planet. You know, some people don't need that. They just want to make enough money to live and do the things that they really believe in. And obviously Walter is the best example of that.
Mm. It's weird though, isn't it? Because I mean, this was a commercial show, and then, you know, somebody like Jean-Paul Gaultier was incredibly commercial at his height, while also being kind of, you know, while also pushing things.
Yeah, but it's timing as well. It has to do, like for instance, Bernard Wilhelm is still making incredible collections. I just think it's, you know, you just have culture that every now and then maybe touches it, or it fits more in people's way of going out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean those Walt shows were enormous for kind of most of that decade, and then suddenly as it got to the end of the 90s, suddenly everybody wanted that kind of futuristic Prada, black nylon, everything metallic, kind of very pared down look, and that just kind of nosedived really, and I think he left in 1999 because they wanted him to really tone it back, and he wouldn't kind of go under a different artistic direction. So he started, I think he then had like a few wilderness years where he wasn't allowed to commercialise his name, and so he was doing these incredible handmade, hand-painted collections that were just, they were kind of like Owen Wum kind of studies of layers and layers and layers of fabric on top of each other. And it was kind of interesting because there was quite a long period, even when he was showing back on the runway, where he looked really out of phase with the times. It did look cartoonish, it looked
And he
kind
did
of
get
in bad
horrible
taste.
reviews.
Yeah.
I remember reading New York Times reviews from like
Yeah.
'94 that were just awful, you know. And also, I think when he did the U2 tour,
Yeah, the pop
I think that was the sign that it's over. You know, the moment you start dressing U2 for a world tour, you know, it's kind of over.
It's kind of, yeah, he did this amazing inflatable, like,
Yeah.
blow up muscle chest.
Oh, it was
thing.
incredible, but
Yeah.
obviously people are not going to wear it anymore going
Yeah.
out. When you see Bono wearing it, I don't know.
It's probably true.
I mean, I think it is interesting that, I think particularly looking at what's happened in the menswear shows in London in the last 5 years, you've suddenly started to see this real impact of Walter's work, and it's almost like it's kind of paved the route for him to be taken back into consideration again. So I mean, when you look at what Sibling are doing, and I mean, obviously we've mentioned Craig Green, and he's worked with Walter, hasn't he? And suddenly this kind of interest in kind of hyper real and different shapes of bodies and a lot of colour and kind of bringing club culture back onto the catwalk more. And I think people are reconsidering him, and he's suddenly in phase of the time again, and yet he's not stopped doing what he's been doing. He's always been making political statements. He's always been interested in you know, ethnographic costume. He's always been interested in you know, kind of shoving guys out covered in hair and big beards and things.
Yeah, I think Walter's, like, for me, he's kind of someone that uses fashion rather than, I wouldn't say is, you know, he is fashion, but, you know, he uses it to make, obviously, make statements in his collections and stuff. And I think that's, for me, why he stands out more than everybody else kind of thing. He's always just using it. I just suppose some of my favourite designs, like Carri and Nazir and stuff, I would say they use fashion to say other things. I don't know, I won't speak on your behalf, but use fashion to say other things rather than kind of so entangled in that kind of industry, really.
Yeah, it's not a money-making machine,
Yeah.
which is incredibly rare now.
Yeah, there's like a sense of honesty with that video. He's kind of talking about, he never mentions fashion, he talks about all these other things that have like kind of come together to create this, but it isn't just about kind of...
Yeah, no, but I think that's super important, because I think the moment you become a money-making machine, you're not participating in culture anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it even will be, well, this is very weird, but I think it's even the end of fashion the moment it becomes a money-making machine, because it has to appeal to the masses. So, which is another story. But
No, but that's true. There's an inherent contradiction in this idea that boring is somehow commercial.
Yeah,
you know, there's a massive contradiction in that. It takes exceedingly refined, i.e. obtuse, i.e. sort of up your bum taste to find boring commercial and interesting and want to buy it. You know, like this idea that exciting is the opposite of commercial is weird in the extreme. It's just like, surely it's just because, you know, U2 are successful because they have, like, you know, the record company are like, I'm going to pump millions into this because I know it will do well, rather than, you know, surely most things in art, music and fashion that are successful are normally quite out there.
yeah.
I agree. I think people always underestimate what, you know, an audience or the mainstream can actually take in. And like, I think it's just actually like fashion industry or music industry or film industry or whatever, not taking risks.
Yeah, no, but I do feel like there's a lot of expectations from creative directors to be understandable, universally understandable, which obviously also means less challenging. And I don't know, like I was listening to Björk today for the first time in years, and she's just doing whatever the fuck she wants, and she still has such a big audience of people that, you know, immediately buy her tickets. But you don't have things like that in fashion. You don't have a record label like One Little Indian that will just support you and make sure that you can eat and make sure that you make enough money and that you're treated with respect and that you can just do whatever the fuck you want.
Well, you have Comme des Garçons.
Yeah.
Some designs.
Yeah, I guess.
But I was thinking, you're right, I think Walter is, for me, he's always been significant, but I feel like he is very culturally significant now. And like the messages that you mentioned that he's talking about, like political messages, I feel like in the 90s, I know when I was a teenager, it was quite trendy to be, you know, interested in the environment and all these things. And he doesn't stop talking about that, you know? And I think fashion can be intelligent, but I do get a bit scared sometimes when it's, I don't know, when it tries to have a message, and I think he does it really successfully. He creates something that's really authentic to him, but that has depth and is political.
Yeah, there was that Chanel show, right, where they came out, I don't know if anyone wants to mention that, they came out holding, I don't know, placards, it was like a feminist thing, right? I mean, for me, there's like, that's the clear difference between actually saying something about culture and maybe just using.
That's like using radical politics as a kind of prop, whereas like Walter is using this as a way of expressing his beliefs.
Completely. It's like an honest kind of account of what's going on to him, really.
And you mentioned about, I can't say the word, ethnographic. I really, sorry, do you want to
What does that mean?
Well, weirdly enough, there used to be this ethnographic museum in Antwerp that I think he used to go to for a lot of research. But that little kind of character with the funny teeth, the little cartoon character that popped up in the film quite a lot, is a guy called Puck Puck, who I think is meant to be he's meant to represent some tribal coming of age character, whatever. He does an enormous amount of research into the references that he makes in his collections. They're not just kind of grabbed out for aesthetic reasons. They've normally got some quite deep symbolic significance within the collections. Just before we look at the pictures, one thing I wanted to talk about also was his fabrics and his use of fabrics, because he normally commissions amazing custom fabrics for his shows, and then also does really, really tiny embroidery. He's got a really strong sense of graphics, and so there are quite often these amazing graphics embroidered into things that you can't actually see when you're looking at something this size. But there'll quite often be little kind of cartoons of all kinds of things going on all over the place.
Yeah, because there's this sort of second layer to him, isn't there, where sort of, depending on mood, he'll sometimes pump out a load of suits.
Yeah, well he and Margiela and I think Anton Milamista all worked with this raincoat manufacturer called Bartsons after they graduated, and so they all learnt how to make kind of traditional trench coats. Effectively, it's like going to work for Burberry back in the day. And so they've all got this, and we're also trained in a really classical manner at the academy, and so they've all got this incredible understanding of suiting and making coats and really traditional, you know, tailoring and manufacture. And he really is very skilled in the way that he does it.
And you lived out in Antwerp, right? Is there, because, you know, in my kind of naive way, when I went to Antwerp, I was like expecting this sort of raftscape. And there wasn't a raftscape, and there wasn't many multicoloured bears either. But like, is there like a Walter gang? Is there any hinterland?
It's fairly well hidden. I mean, I think there are particular people that, well, actually, weirdly, I think he dressed the street sweepers. He did like municipal costumes for all the workers in Antwerp. So that in fact there was this proper Waltscape. I think they still do wear them. And you can see it makes sense with kind of like high-vis strips and bright colours and stuff. Actually, I think I want Carri to do municipal uniforms. Actually, that would be great. Proper high-visibility street workers' uniforms, I think.
Wow.
But you used to have these gangs. I mean, they're not gangs as in like, in an exciting way. Like it was like a Dries van Noten gang, and on the Molenweg is the gang, and the Raf Simons gang.
But it was much more all the people wearing the kind of wafty kind of black fabric, and they were much more visible. And I think that, I mean, there were particular collectors for Walter's stuff, and I think there are a lot of Dutch collectors actually. I seem to remember quite a lot of people kind of coming over for the day, and they'd go to this amazing Walt shop. Because it's not stuff that's like selling in the gazillions, it's stuff that's selling in a very discreet level. The other thing he does also is costumes. He's at the moment working, I just got the skinny from friends in Antwerp today. He's working on an opera with Philip Glass, which is coming out next month, and it's based in ancient Egypt. So if we see any incredible Egyptian motifs coming in there.
That's the only thing about Walter that I'm a bit surprised about, is that the politics aren't radical anymore. Like, that's what I always find a bit surprising. It's I wouldn't say lame, but I wouldn't say
Why do you say
radical.
that? Like,
it's very politically correct, you know.
but he's
And I
talking
think
about.
it's very fashionable as well to be almost to be political correct, to go to Whole Foods, to, you know, not complain about.
Yeah, but I feel like going to Whole Foods is kind of like a status symbol.
Yeah,
so I guess
but that's
wearing
what
it
I
on
mean,
your clothes
exactly.
is like a status symbol.
No,
but
that's what I mean.
I don't think so, because I feel like it's so
It used to be
consistent
the other way
in his
around.
work.
I think, you know, like Patsy used to be politically incorrect and that was incredibly fashionable. I think now it's exactly the other way around, and now you have people.
But when you say he's been consistent, I'd say he's been pretty consistent, just like speaking about things that he thinks about continuously. So whether
it's very individualistic.
Yeah, so whether like
no, but
it's become a thing or not, I'm not sure.
But unfortunately, the things that he's talking about, like global warming, racism, or whatever, they still exist. So I guess that's why he's still talking about them.
I mean, I imagine we might see some response to the stuff going on in Paris last week, today. I don't know. Would you think? I mean, I think I was trying to hide my teacup. I mean, some response to terror attacks or something seems like it might be something that would kind of waft in today. I don't know.
Last season, I think he did something about surveillance, didn't he? And
yeah. But again, the surveillance was a big consideration in contemporary art in the last couple of years as well. There have been quite a few people trying to do responses to facial recognition software and this kind of thing.
Wasn't there a show over in one of the Low Countries? There was a show last year, because a lot of my students were doing surveillance fashion, and it was either Amsterdam or Antwerp. There was a show about it. Sorry,
I don't know.
I'm sort of chiming in with you. I'm hoping that somebody might rescue my terrible knowledge.
But yeah, he did exactly that. I think he did like dazzle, camouflage, like makeup, and like but that's contemporary, and I think he is contemporary, and not just like, for me, he's someone that's, well, Kiss the Future is like my favourite expression ever. It's like such a celebration of the future, but his website has always been amazing, and like his digital presence, I feel like you were saying about whether he's got gangs, I imagine they're all around the world, and I feel like he was a designer, one of the first designers to embrace the internet, and like did a collection all about avatars, and like, so I feel like.
Well, I think as well, one of the things that I'm really fascinated about is the way fashion designers that work with music, like what we just saw. I mean, on one level, it's a musical. You can probably trace its sort of cultural lineage back to sort of opera or something. But on another level, it's I've banged on about this for various times, but it's all that. Is it not Philip K. Dick? William Gibson. The idea of the youth want to be inside the computer game, and it's like Walter sort of speaks always about. I don't know. For me, when I see Walter's clothes, very much like when I saw your clothes, Carri, I just feel like that's what I'd look like inside a computer game. That I'd look like that, and I find that I want to be a piece of music. I don't want to be an actor. With a 1950s haircut. I want to be like a techno bass line. But
you want to be like Rez.
Yeah, I mean, like everybody does, right? I mean, that's why people get stoned and play computer games. I mean, yeah, so I find that really interesting about him, that he's always kind of riffed on that.
You're right, like fantasy and reality, and like, yeah. I like that when I mentioned the collection about avatars, he did both. He made the collection virtually and he made it in real life. And I guess
yeah, he did, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that.
And Curtly, you've created a website that is a sort of you're attempting to do a fashion magazine online that's about moving image and sound, right?
I wouldn't say it's based on a fashion magazine. I'm not quite sure what it's based on at the moment. I'd say that both influences, fashion or image, actually, I wouldn't say fashion, and music are kind of quite entwined for me. So sometimes when you hear a song, you know what you should be looking like. If you're like dressing up or going out, depending on what you listen to, it maybe depends on what you're going to wear for the night, kind of thing. So those two things are like initial, so maybe sometimes the sound will influence the image, and sometimes the image will influence the sound, and that's kind of what I'm playing with the website. So every single piece, whether it's a moving piece, we've got stuff on there from Daniel Swan and a few others, Felix Lee as well. They've all both got like a sound and image together kind of thing. It's kind of like what he was doing back in the day as well. He was kind of very much about the club and what he would think you would be wearing, kind of thing. So, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like that Malcolm McLaren thing of he wanted to design clothes because it was painting. It was the most musical form of painting fashion, which I love. I'm just like, that's exactly how I feel about fashion. It's like, it's just slower music if it's good, and that's kind of what kind of represents that kind of shift in the approach to it. I don't know, for me. Does that make sense to you, Hettie?
Yes.
Yeah?
I was just thinking about Fashion Beast. Did you see Fashion Beast?
No.
It's a graphic novel that Malcolm McLaren did. Well, it came out after his death, but anyway, we'll talk about that.
No, maybe that's good. No, because that's the thing, I don't have the references. That's
it's about, it's basically he gave the story for it, and the story is to do with, this kind of futuristic club world that's somewhat based on kind of London of that time, of the 80s, I think it was. And somebody getting plucked out of that and becoming the muse for a fashion house and all of the fashion shows. So it's exactly what you were talking about, actually.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
You should read it.
Yeah. All right, let's read Walter's fashion creations. So this is bougie.
What does it say?
Yeah, I can't see it very well.
Stop
Terrorising.
our world.
Oh, you were right.
I'm
Well,
surprised they're not wearing Homburgs.
but I don't know if that is about terrorism. It could be about the planet rather than.
Well,
So is that on kind of... Can I get rid of my teacup so it's making lots of rattling noises?
thank you.
So are they wearing kind of plastic tunics over the tops of their trousers?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a plastic vest.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I love those blue trousers. Like,
It's funny because that really is a return to
Oh, no,
kind
that's
of
the-
waltz stuff, actually. That's real 90s club wear.
What's the one say with the pink trousers? Can't read that. Oh, it doesn't.
I think it's the same thing.
I thought the trousers were PVC, but then I realised it's the tunic over the top. But I like that effect.
What are they, kind of satiny? It's very long and broad.
Yeah, I was thinking I like that long length with those trousers.
These looks are quite plain though, these last few.
Yeah,
I
it's
feel like
very
maybe it has
ungraphic.
something mad at the back, some
Yeah.
excitement again, like.
Or maybe inside. Do you remember the jackets that like turned inside out
Like
and had all the
reversible.
had all the. That looks like a kind of eye cap print, like enlarged.
Maarten, what are you thinking?
The thing is with Walter, when you shoot his clothes, it's very difficult to put it in a narrative that works with other designers. And when I saw the first looks, I was like, oh, you can easily shoot that, you can shoot that, you can shoot that, you can shoot that.
That's
which
fantastic,
is
that's
very
wow.
rare for
He's
Walter.
making up for it.
Exactly.
So you can't shoot it.
No, I'm
In
saying I find
months.
it difficult, and usually with the narratives that I want to shoot or the boys that I want to shoot, I sometimes I request Walter, and it can be quite difficult because it's such a personal vision and so incredibly directional, unambiguous that it's very difficult sometimes to mix. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Very different, and
I
that's
think
also why I find it very difficult to wear it myself.
Yeah.
I guess. But
I think some designers, kind of their whole vision, styling, casting, and everything is so, and they're on point, is so specific, so honest to their own style or ideas that it's kind of unnecessary maybe to recreate it within styling sometimes.
That's interesting.
And also, it doesn't feel like a collection that's designed per look. And I felt like in his previous 4 seasons, it was very much designed per look. These trousers, that jacket, that overall print. Here it feels styled.
The prints are a lot more mixed up, aren't they?
Yeah.
And layered.
And it's incredibly beautiful. I wish we heard the music and it was a show.
It feels like he's playing around at this junction point between a kind of loose trousered suit and a kind of tunic robe with kind of a loose pair of pants underneath. So he's kind of between that kind of European suiting culture and something that's a bit more Middle Eastern. I don't know. It's
Would it be strange if I said that I would love Margiela Mensah to look like this?
No, I can see.
And are these basically deconstructing on one side, which again is actually, you say you want Margiela Mensah to look like that, but the idea of a garment that's undone on one side and done on the other is very Margiela.
I like the setting, like the actual room. I think it works well with the collection. Like we've got the flocked wallpaper and then those prints. It's kind of visually, I like that. I like that clashing.
And we had this kind of netting coming in the last season as well, didn't we? Which was actually making me think of the process of sketching a costume and the way that you'd put little swatches of fabric onto things. And
This is almost like the new version of those big jewel.
This has very little. I mean, I've seen over the years. I've only followed him since about 2003, something like that, and I've seen him. He had a Wild and Lethal Trash, the re-release around that time, but he was doing quite classic clothes, and then when he did the Sex Clown collection, he went back to a sort of more historical Walter, and this really has very little to do almost with what we were talking about, the Walter we were talking about.
Yeah.
Except for what you were saying about the beautiful fabrics and the
well, I mean, I actually weirdly think that there are more elements of the Walt collections in this than I've seen for a while. I mean, I think that kind of the transparent plastic tunics really reminds me of a kind, the idea that you'd have these opaque strips of inside it, or flashing your nipples while you're dancing. Suddenly that kind of shiny texture really reminds me of what he was doing back then. And there does seem to be a lot more of that artificiality coming in as well.
His casting's changed a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty. I don't know. It feels quite.
Quite Aryan by comparison to usual.
Yeah, but I had that with last season. It was a very petit prince with with the big jewel, and I have the same kind of.
It was more mixed up though.
I think before it used to be a lot more mixed up, and then I know I started to see the collections. I don't know how long ago. I think it was the one where they were wearing I think it was 2010, where they were wearing the corsets. Where that was kind of, or maybe it was another one where they were all black guys.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like he should probably, I don't know personally, I feel like it should be always mixed up. That's kind of a bit more of where I think it should be a bit more like worldly feeling. But I feel like he's sometimes
Is that
now
the one
starting to.
where it had the very African hair?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that one.
Yeah, but that really reminded me of, what are the name of the guys in South Africa? The really dapper guys that wear the pink suits, black guys. And then
the sapper from
So I felt like that was like, and also I think he was doing so much tailoring. It was like a big departure there, so it kind of made sense.
Yeah.
That he used all black models. I thought that was quite strong. That statement.
But it's a bit. I get what you're saying, Curtly. It's a bit weird to do that and then there not be any black guys in this show.
Yeah.
It's like
or just other races.
Yeah.
He also did a show which is all modelled entirely by bears as well. So.
Yeah.
No, that's cool, but I think it's weird. It's weird to. I think I have less problem with somebody making a statement about bears or about race than I do then sort of as if, oh, well, this is normal.
Yeah, that's kind of. He maybe didn't mean that, and he has his reasons for it personally, but
I'm sure he didn't mean it, but that's what it reads like, doesn't it? Yeah,
completely.
Yeah. Subconsciously, that is what he's done, you know, and it's like, well, that's a bit.
I guess it's nice if those characters filter in on other seasons as well, so it's like this consistent kind of like world of characters rather than just for each season.
I'm really interested by the transition around this ICAT print that Carri was talking about earlier, 'cause it looks like there's this, I think it's in the look, maybe did it start in look 17 when there was the kind of ICAT bomber, and it looks like that then transforms at around kind of look 23 into something that's actually more like a graphic that's referencing the same kind of shapes there, but it's like a kind of drawn graphic.
What, here?
Yeah.
You're right.
Or you mean like a 3D version of the ICAT?
Yeah.
Which is like a hand-drawn graphic version of the ICAT, but just with, I mean...
But there it looks more like Tibetan or something. Yeah. But I think that's what I love about him. He has a lot of can you say it for me again? Ethnological. I did a residency at like a...
He references other cultures in his work.
And I still can't say it. But he references a lot of other cultures, but he really understands it and in depth. And also, like, I have a big problem with designers that just take from culture very literally, and he very much makes it his own. Like, he'll understand it, but he's like, he'll take his, you know, like a face and make a new character, or like you said here, is like morphed a ICAT print. And I think it's really a lot more respectful to that culture.
Do we have any detail images of the...
But it's such a missed opportunity. What you said about diversity on the runway. It's especially if you if you compare it to London, how shocking it is.
Yeah, I do find it a little weird. I still feel like when he did all those all black models, they were very dark-skinned black models, and that is still like, maybe not for us, but for some people that is still a really big statement to do that. But like, I'd definitely like to see.
I feel like it's what happened. A lot of those London boys don't go to Paris because people don't think there's going to be any, you know, it's like they're not signed maybe to the Paris agency, you know, because most people are signed to a different agency in Paris in London, and that maybe is what's happening.
Sorry, just that one where he says warning explicit beauty there, I'm just wondering whether that's a reference to, do you remember the Paul McCarthy butt plug that was on display in Paris?
And it was on his invitation.
And so there was this enormous Paul McCarthy butt plug that was on display in Paris just in December, and people got really, really offended by it, and people basically stabbed it and it deflated. And I don't know where the kind of semantics of a deflating butt plug kind of disappear into.
Do you think it has to do with censorship then?
Yeah, so warning explicit beauty, people getting offended by art, I think maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
that was also very French, wasn't it?
And he's got these little lanyards there as well, which might be a reference to that as well.
Is that a butt plug?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I meant. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I like that. He said touches of that, or you know, like the little character that has the penis.
Little penisy Walter. Yeah. Also, when you speak to him, the word penis comes up about every 3 minutes in conversation.
But then I feel like, it's very. It's not inclusive. I mean, it's very inclusive. It's not exclusive. It's like he's looking at African art and totemic kind of like fertility things and stuff like that. I don't know, I find it really...
These are definitely
powerful.
Paul McCarthy butt plugs. I'm sorry, because he did an exhibition of inflatables in Antwerp, and I've got there's this fantastic photograph of him where he's wearing
true,
kind of
isn't it? I mean,
shorts and a backpack standing in front of one of these inflatables looking extremely happy. So.
But no, we haven't seen anybody put Je suis on butt plug, you know, and it's exactly... I mean, obviously nobody died,
It's
which
not exactly
obviously
the
is
same.
awful. But no, it is the same.
No.
It is. You know, somebody's used violence to destroy. It's not the same. Death is a revolting thing, and it's awful. I want to make that clear. But the you know, people have destroyed somebody's self-expression, and it was kind of accepted. No, there wasn't an outrage saying, how dare these people destroy this sexual expression, because the homophobia says, oh, it's fine, you know, it's a butt plug, it should be destroyed.
Exactly, and that's the other side of France, which is even worse.
I mean, of course, the
More
Paris Art Critics Association were up in arms, holding up pictures of it. All 6 of them, I think.
Really?
I was just saying, Curtly was right. There are things going on in the back.
The only thing I feel like
Leopard.
everything's quite delicate. Like even the butt plug chains are like small. Everything's kind of like maybe a bit quaint, a bit too nice, you know, compared to what I would expect him to do, or what maybe not what I would expect him to do, what I would want him to do. You know.
You could wear that discreetly and not offend your granny.
Well, because it's, I mean, you know, yeah, I want to be very clear that I'm not comparing the crime of stabbing a sculpture to death with something infinitely worse. But it is a form, you know, it's a form of self-expression, and, you know, it's interesting the amount of designers that still won't talk about being gay, you know. It's interesting the amount of fashion that skirts around the case. It's interesting that...
I think it's very local. I think it's very local to Paris and France. In Belgium, they would never do that, or in Holland, or in the UK.
Have a giant butt plug.
Well, I mean, there's a freaking leprechaun holding a butt plug in Rotterdam, isn't there?
Oh,
Like-
so you
Yeah,
don't, they
Paul
wouldn't hurt
McCartney.
it.
No, I just think it's very local. It's very Paris. It's very Paris that like hundreds of thousands of people are demonstrating against
That are offended.
other people's love line.
But you know, it's funny because when I promised I wasn't going to talk about homosexuality to myself this season, because actually some of the YouTube comments were like, stop talking about homosexuality all the time. Like Daryoush brings it up in every panel. And I thought, well, that's really funny considering about 70% of the fashion, males in fashion are gays. Like, you know, so it's kind of interesting, you know, that he's putting the butt plug there, because that is the, you know, it's the awful truth of the thing, isn't it?
And when I was talking about like a European sense of humour and like sexuality, I feel like that is, it's a kind of, I can't explain, but you know that kind of like Bernard or Walter when they play, you know, it's very gay, but it's like, I don't know, it's different to like what I imagine, like, I don't know.
Well, it's all like everything every man wears is all like, it's all really gay. It's all of it.
But it's so playful and so like, but so, I don't know, like.
Would you use the word kitsch? Or
No,
Yeah.
no,
Is
no,
that
no, I
just
don't
too-
know, not at all, because
too
I don't think
horrible?
it's not kitchen, it's not camp, it's something, I don't know, I find it so much more interesting, and as a female I find it a lot sexier as well, like, than...
But it's making fun of yourself. And
Yeah.
I think that is, you know, that's why it's so incredibly popular in Japan and in Germany and in Holland. It's not popular in Italy or in Spain or in France. It's not the same sense of humor. It's not. I don't think it
Yeah,
is.
no, yeah, I guess when I was saying European sense of humour, I meant more like a German, Dutch kind of sense
I guess
of humour.
so, yeah.
Like,
Why? Because it's a lot more, it's less about...
it's more, well, it's Butt Magazine versus, I don't know, help me, Daryoush.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's less dreamy, isn't it? And it's more literal. I mean, it's less about some beautiful Botticelli, sorry, you know what I mean, curly haired boy.
Saying that to Hettie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's when I get really out of my depth on these things.
You know,
I think it's just a general attitude towards sexuality in general, where if you go and you read Émile Zola in the 19th century, he's talking about people having ménage à trois, he's talking about people having kids out of wedlock, he's talking about people shagging on the roof of the shed. you read his British counterpart Dickens, and nobody has
Yeah.
sex at all or has like tits hanging out.
Yeah.
It's just like, I think there's just like this general thing where sex didn't cross the channel
Yeah.
until quite recently.
No, I think it's true.
So we're struggling to keep up with, you know, the more sophisticated world that Maarten springs from.
You're right.
This garment is absolutely extraordinary. I wish we could kind of see that a bit
Incredible.
more.
It's amazing.
It's a really great collection. No, do we agree?
No, I agree. And it doesn't. I was really excited to see. I did not know what to expect, and I couldn't have even predicted this.
I find it interesting because I find with a lot of his stuff, there's so much going on that you almost it takes a minute to catch up and see the stuff and then see what's going on, and maybe, you know, I definitely prefer his shows where there is a consistent theme almost drumbeat into you, whereas this feels like a lot of brilliant stuff, but I'm not sure. I think it's great, but I could do with some sort of packaging so that I knew what it was, a bit blunter packaging.
Yeah, I think it needs to be more punchy. I'm not sure. I feel like it's.
That's the thing I
not
don't
as-
like about his work.
Oh,
That
really?
it feels like a one-liner every show.
I prefer that. I feel like I need to, maybe it needs to well, it doesn't need to translate, let's not say it needs to translate, but it's nice if somebody outside could appreciate it as something else kind of thing.
I think you were saying like
As-
it's more detailed and sort of like, I like that refinement though. His stuff is usually so
Refined is good.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
Which is I
love,
don't like.
okay, no, but I love like how cartoony is and how graphic everything is. The silhouette, the prints, everything. Graphic is the perfect word for his aesthetic. But I like this. This reminds me of like Chapman Brothers or something like that. So it's like something that looks really refined, but I'm sure there's something going on there. You know, there's some subversion somewhere, and that's kind of nice.
Well, yeah, Chapman Brothers is quite an interesting kind of comparison because that's just normally ends up being quite bawdy, doesn't it? It sort of has this high art sophistication, but
It's in fact, weirdly enough, they're another. I oddly know about this, but they're another. They are another. I was about to say they're another artist. They have also had an artwork censored in the last year in Europe, where they had a work on display at the Maxi in Rome that there was an association for the rights of the child that got it removed. So in fact, that's quite a good point of comparison if this is talking about the censorship of art and the decision to be massively offended by things that are in the public realm on behalf of other people,
yeah.
which I think is partly what this is about.
Yeah. No,
Absolutely.
I'm sure.
So bizarre. I find it so bizarre to hear. I just can't even picture it. People are protesting against a piece of art.
Just people get furious on behalf of other people who haven't necessarily spoken out against
No,
it
of
at all.
course not. They don't give a flying fuck.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's always a difficulty.
It is, yeah.
What?
I think people see things. They place a lot of thought on things that maybe isn't always there. So often people get angry with something not for what it is, but for what it
Of course,
represents.
it's fear. It's political agenda. It's
Yeah.
just finding a project to make everyone scared and then having an easy win. That's it.
Well, and also though there's a kind of cosign with fashion culture there though, because so much of what you do in fashion, fashion is a really efficient way of dismissing people. So, you know, you're walking, like, we can't all be everybody's friend, that's impossible. So, in order to mean that you can get from one side of the room to the other, you have to be able to decide who you want to talk to or not. And fashion is a really great shorthand for that. So it's quite interesting because, you know, it basically depends on you giving on prejudice. It depends on prejudices, and so many of these arguments around art and stuff and politics essentially are people going, "You've done X, so therefore you think Y and Z, and I hate you." Often it's not that they're that bothered about X. They're just like, "Oh, you've done X, so therefore you're Y and Z, and I hate you," which is a very fashion way to think because that's why we love, you know, we need it. we need that as a communication. That's the whole point of fashion communication, is that I've got this top, therefore I'm an exciting thinker or lover or whatever, you know, or I've got this top, therefore you shouldn't talk to me, I'm gonna, you know, be boring. Or,
If you saw someone with that, what would you want to do? I'd kind of want to hug him or like play with it. I feel like there's lots of.
Well, first I would laugh. Because I mean, that's the best thing about it. It makes you smile.
Yeah.
It's making him smile, which is the sweet
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like this is such a he's smiling now, but if you see the video before of the show, everyone looked like they were having so much fun. I love watching catwalk shows where the models look like they're having fun as well.
Yeah.
So it's so far removed doing this now, but.
Well, I don't think I mean, he's never done like serious, like moody. Do you remember like when models always had to look miserable in all fashion shoots? And it was just sort of, I don't know, early 2000s, like male models were just like always sulking.
Just want to point out Egyptian eyes.
Ah.
That's maybe just me reading something into it that's not.
No, you got a point.
Oh,
there.
yeah, that's true.
Right.
Yeah, and I love that like you talked about how he cast bears in a collection. Like obviously they're his audience, and I think that's really brave to like put them on the catwalk.
Well, again, that was just the most joyous, fun show ever, and just like the most happy-making thing to watch as well.
I wish there was something we could argue about.
I'd like to argue about the fact we can't see the backs of enough of the clothes.
Yeah, that's a shame, because I'm pretty sure he would have some other things going on there.
I do feel these are like kind of you're pinning fabric swatches all over a costume sketch or something. It's quite, and these seem more process-led than the others.
It's really like a collage kind of coming to life. Isn't it?
Maarten, let's wrap up. Give me some thoughts to take away.
Okay, some thoughts to take away. I think it's really important that we start thinking about who the real terrorists are, and what religion means and what money means. Because I think in the end, there's one religion which causes the most damage, and I think that's money. That's what I want everyone to take home.
Wow.
Oh my god.
So now you don't.
Thanks. I don't know what I can say after that. I just think that water is like a real celebration of life, and I think, as we discussed, like he's really relevant to a lot of young designers now, and but I like that he still has so much of his own, of that same identity that we saw from the 90s in his work, but that he's continually evolved it and like refined it, and there's something really elegant, I think, about his like recent collections, and yeah, I'm really excited to see him continue to kiss the future.
Curtly.
I think I respect him in the sense he's always honest, regardless of whether I like it or not, and he changes each season exactly what he wants to say, exactly what he feels. So although this isn't my favourite, I prefer the old kind of loud, punchy, bright, brash kind of style. I still hope he continues and just kind of keeps making statements. That's all really.
What is it you and Tolga love about Walter?
I think the kind of primary aspect, everything feels very honest and kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe just like exactly what when you were young, what you think was exciting. So colour, so shape, so things would go out or things would go in, things would be cinched in. You know, all those kind of like really basic ways of thinking. Maybe
Like
I think
cartoons.
Cartoons were exciting. There's a reason why you kind of start kids learning of the colours and things like that. So I think that's what was exciting for us, and also the aspiration. You know, you had people like lying down in arenas, you know, and people like sinking down. It was like a show. So that kind of very primary aspect to him is what was exciting. So I hope he doesn't lose that.
So Hettie, you're going to close the panel for us.
Goodness, the pressure. Well, in terms of message, I think the message of standing up for free expression, free creative expression, and the right to kind of be mildly offensive is rather nice. And the fact that he's not doing it in a kind of bandwagon jumping way is very lovely. I thought that was a very elegant collection. I was quite excited by some of the prints, and I really look forward to seeing them more close up in the graphics, and also the embroidery. And it was just very fun and life-affirming and joyous.
Cool. Definitely. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.